We are back with episode 2 of Fantasy Unfiltered. Super glad you guys are here. I'm really excited for this little mini series that we're doing to help pass the off season, to help keep us occupied until the fantasy football season starts back up again. But make sure you're locked into these videos because we're going to be having some pretty big giveaways coming up. I'm actually working on something behind the scenes. Let's call it Project X, that I can't really disclose much information about right now, but I will tell you, you're going to want to be a part of it, and it's going to change fantasy football forever. It's not been done. No one's doing it, and I just think it's a brilliant idea that I want all of you guys to be a part of. So if you want to join this great community that we're building, this strong culture, this wave that we're setting here at ROC Fantasy, then feel free to hop on board. Before we talk about who I think are going to be some of the best receivers in fantasy football next year, I want to give you guys a couple quick facts about me. I actually am a twin. I have a fraternal twin brother. I'm 7.5 minutes older, but there was a point in our lives where he was 7 or so inches taller than me. Maybe I'll throw up a picture on the screen. Maybe I won't. Kind of embarrassing. But I also have a younger sister, a couple step siblings as well. I am married. I have 2 young boys, the ages of 3 and 1. So I am a dad. I'm an entrepreneur. I own my own business on top of what I'm doing here on this YouTube channel in the fantasy football space. Obviously, I would like to make this my full-time job someday, but for now, we're not there yet. We're working on it, though. We're getting there. But feel free to share a quick fact, a fun fact about yourself, literally anything in the comment section so I can get to know you guys better. Again, that is one of the biggest goals. The reason why I'm doing this series is because I want to form that relationship with you guys. I don't just want to be a talking head telling you who to start and sit. I want to build that bond. Maybe we'll have a meetup someday. Maybe we'll have some sort of event. Maybe we'll start several fantasy leagues, and I want to get to know you guys. I want to see who would be a good fit for the league. Maybe we'll have meetups for the league. Maybe we'll draft in person, right? I want to revolutionize the fantasy football space. I want to make it more interactive, more personal, not just you sitting at home by yourself, watching Red Zone for 8 hours, living on the group chat with your friends, like on your phone. No, I want to do stuff in person. So keep that in mind for the future. All right, let's talk about some quick NFL news to get you guys caught up on. Drake May, we know the Patriots lost the Super Bowl. Super unfortunate if you're a New England fan, but you guys have been pretty spoiled over the last decade, so you can't feel too bad for you guys. But he's clearly dealing with a pretty serious AC joint sprain in his throwing shoulder. It was pretty evident in the Super Bowl. I mean, he was probably nervous, right? But he was missing some wide open receivers. Reports coming out, he won't need surgery, just needs time off from throwing the football. I truthfully think that May, as of right now, is a better fantasy quarterback than real life quarterback, in my opinion. Like, if we're stacking Drake May, Caleb Williams, and Jaden Daniels up against each other, I think I'd probably have Jaden Daniels first, then Caleb Williams, then Drake May. Talking about real life. If we're talking fantasy, Jaden Daniels was so special his rookie year. Like, I would have no problem putting Daniels at 1 and then probably Drake May and then Caleb Williams, but they're all very close. I will say that. Tight end for the Browns, David Njoku, set to hit free agency, which is a huge lift, which is a huge boost, I should say, for Harold Fannin Jr., who is on the cusp of being a star tight end in this league. He already flashed his rookie year. He was absolutely tremendous in a really bad situation on a really bad offense, but with no Njoku on the roster, he is going to go off. I have no real interest in targeting Njoku in this year's fantasy drafts, but I will be drafting a lot of Fannin. Obviously, now the concern is Shedeur Sanders. Is he QB1? I do think he's better than people think, but he was wildly inaccurate in his rookie year. This Browns offense is a mess. Can Todd Monken, head coach, coming in, can he fix this offense? He's probably going to call the plays. I'm not so sure, but I still do think that Fannin is probably just going to see a ton of targets, and it's not really going to matter. Some other news coming out of Dallas is that they're probably going to franchise tag George Pickens, which kind of saw that coming. That's kind of how Dallas does business. They don't do business well, right? They are just really bad when it comes to contracts. But who knows? Like, if George Pickens is fine with the 1-year franchise tag, then whatever. We want him in Dallas, right? It's a perfect situation for him. But if he's upset, if he holds out, if he wants that big deal, it could cause some issues. I still want George Pickens anywhere I can get him, redraft, dynasty, just because he's a great fit in this offense. Number 2 receiver, kind of takes the pressure off him. He's on a pass-happy offense. Dak Prescott is kind of the perfect quarterback for Pickens. We want him in Dallas. Ideally, he gets tagged and then they work on a long-term extension, right? That would be the perfect situation, but it's a lot better than George Pickens going to a really bad offense with a really bad quarterback, and then it's just kind of like him going back to Pittsburgh, right? So George Pickens, not super concerned, but if it could end up being a problem if he does hold out. Matthew Stafford confirmed on a week ago on the NFL Honor Show that he's coming back for another season. That is great news for all Rams offensive skill players, especially Puka Nacua, who's likely going to be a top 5, top 3 pick in upcoming redraft fantasy leagues this upcoming season because Stafford is back. Now, if Stafford would have retired, I've been a little worried about Puka's overall outlook, but with him coming back, great news for him. Great news for Devontae if he decides to come back, which I think he's going to. Devontae desperately wants a ring. The Rams are close. I think Devontae comes back for another season. And then it's going to be interesting to see what this Rams backfield split is. I feel like every offseason we kind of go back to square one. Like, who's the RB1? Who's the better running back? Pretty much what it comes down to is that Kyren is still going to likely see the majority of the touches. It was very close to a 50-50 split, though, the back half of the year. I think Blake Corum is a great running back. I think both guys are good backs. I don't think that one of them would have to leave for the other to be like a top 10 fantasy running back, in my opinion. I think they're going to kind of hurt each other's values, but we shall see. Let's talk about really quickly who the top 12 wide receivers in fantasy were last season. All right. We're going to do full PPR and we're going to rank this by fantasy points per game. These were the top 12 wide receivers last year in fantasy points per game. At number 1, not a shocker, Puka Nacua. At number 2, Jackson Smith-Njigba. At number 3, Jamar Chase. At number 4, Amon-Ra St. Brown. At number 5, Rashee Rice. At number 6, George Pickens. 7, Chris Olave had a great year. 8, Drake London. 9, Davante Adams because he had a ton of touchdowns. 10, Nico Collins. 11, A.J. Brown. And 12, CeeDee Lamb. Kind of had an off year, which was a little disappointing because I had a lot of CeeDee Lamb in fantasy. Sorry, I keep checking over at the monitor because my 1-year-old is napping, and I'm hoping that he continues to nap so we can continue to chat. Now, if we go by total fantasy points last year, Zay Flowers, Michael Wilson, and Jameson Williams all sneak inside the top 12. I think that's super interesting. We know Michael Wilson had a great second half of the year. He looked like the best wide receiver in Arizona. And then CeeDee Lamb, Drake London, and Rashee Rice would all fall outside the top 12. We know Rashee Rice was suspended. CeeDee Lamb was hurt. Drake London was also hurt. All right, let's talk about the top 12 wide receivers in fantasy football this season. This is what I think it's going to look like. I think Puka Nacua is going to finish first overall again because Matthew Stafford's coming back. There's not a lot to talk about here. He's clearly the best receiver in football right now, and he's been absolutely unreal since he came into the league in 2023. I will say this, if Davante Adams does retire, that might hurt Puka, right? Because Davante still holds he still takes away attention from defenses. He's still a really good receiver. He's still Davante Adams, but if he's gone, like, is Puka Nacua going to get doubled? Is he going to get bracketed? Or, that could be a problem. Maybe they get another receiver through the draft or free agency. I mean, they definitely would if Davante decided to retire, but that should be interesting to see how that pans out. Of course, my son is crying. Oh, he went back down. My wife is here, so. But, all right, number 2, Jamar Chase. I mean, it's Jamar Chase. He's insanely talented. He might be the most gifted receiver in all of football. The thing with Jamar is just, it's all about Joe Burrow. Can Joe Burrow stay healthy? If he can, then Jamar Chase is going to continue to ball. I mean, he balled out with Joe Flacco. Is he quarterback proof? Maybe. But Joe Flacco probably not going to be a Bengal this year. At number 3, Jackson Smith-Njigba had a fantastic year. I'll say I'm a little concerned about Clint Kubiak, who was the offensive coordinator, leaving, now the head coach for Las Vegas. That is a little concerning. We also don't know who the offensive coordinator is going to be yet, but it's pretty evident Darnold, JSN do have a very special connection, and JSN is just an absolute fantastic receiver. At number 4, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is the definition of consistency at this point. Like, he's a guy that you just, or for me, like I always feel like, oh, I don't really want to draft Amon-Ra. He feels kind of like a boring pick, but don't make the mistake I did last year. Continue to draft him every season. 2023, he was the wide receiver 3. 2024, he was the wide receiver 3. 2025, he was the wide receiver 3. Like, that is absolutely insane. He's one of the safest picks you can make in all of fantasy every single year. All right, number 5, a little bit more of a bold pick. It's Malik Nabers for me. Yes, he's coming off that torn ACL and meniscus in his right knee in week 4 last season. He had surgery in late October, but I think if he's fully healthy, if he's ready to go, I think there's just no reason he can't be a top 5 receiver in fantasy with Jackson Dart at the helm. Yes, Matt Nagy is the new offensive coordinator in New York under John Harbaugh. Don't love Matt Nagy. I know he's been with Kansas City. I feel like Patrick Mahomes just covered up a lot of Nagy's flaws. So that's the one thing I'm not super excited about. I kind of almost wish Brian Daboll was still the head coach, but I think that Nabers is just so insanely talented. I think he's going to have a big year, regardless of who the offensive coordinator is. At number 6, Drake London, who was balling last year from week 6 to 11. He was the wide receiver 1 in total fantasy points and points per game. And he even missed a game in week 8. Like, that Drake London, Michael Penix connection is really good. It was on full display until week 11 rolled around. It was just an absolute nightmare for Atlanta. We know Drake London suffered that PCL sprain in his left knee. Michael Penix Jr. tore his ACL in the same game. Absolutely brutal. Penix has now torn his ACL 3 times, twice in his right knee, once in his left knee. Like, that is just, you got to feel terrible for the guy. That's horrible. So obviously, like, Drake London's potential, his ceiling, all depends on Michael Penix coming back. When is he going to come back? Is he going to be good to go? Is it going to take him a while to kind of get back into it? But obviously, before you draft, right, we're going to have a better grasp on how Penix is recovering. Still like Drake London regardless. At number 7, Justin Jefferson. This is assuming that J.J. McCarthy is not the starting quarterback. Anyone else would be better at quarterback. It's hard to put Jefferson any farther down, but obviously we're going to know who the quarterback is sooner rather than later. Then we can kind of assess that situation. At number 8, CeeDee Lamb kind of had a down year, was injured. The addition of George Pickens kind of hurt him in terms of fantasy, but I still like CeeDee Lamb as a player, and he's in one of the most pass-happy offenses in Dallas, so he's still a strong pick. At number 9, I think it's going to be Nico Collins, who I thought was going to have a huge year this season, but Stroud kind of struggled. This offensive line was bad yet again. The questionable play calling also kind of held this offense back. They didn't really have a great run game for a good chunk of the year. That didn't help either, but I think he will be better this season. At number 10, George Pickens, coming off a career year. He's probably going to be a Cowboy for one more season at least with that franchise tag. And yeah, he's just another guy who's going to benefit from Dak being the quarterback and for the Cowboys throwing the football at a very high clip. At number 11, it's going to be Chris Olave, who closed out the year scorching hot from weeks 15 to 17. He was the wide receiver 2 behind Puka Nacua. He built a very strong rapport with rookie quarterback Tyler Shuck, who I think is looking like a very nice quarterback, looking like he's going to have a nice career in the NFL. I think Olave is going to build on his career year last year. He had 100 receptions, over 1,100 yards, and 9 touchdowns. He's going to be the focal point yet again for the Saints offense. And then lastly, at number 12, the guy in the thumbnail, Emeka Egbuka, who started out his rookie campaign on an absolute tear. He had 5 touchdowns in his first 5 games, and then he cooled off drastically the second half of the year. It was really weird. I think a lot of it was he suffered that hamstring injury. That didn't help, but a big part of it was Baker Mayfield, who started off the season fantastic, had a massive decline, especially in his accuracy the second half of the season. I know Baker Mayfield was also dealing with a shoulder injury. That didn't help as well. But I think both of these two things are easily fixable. Hopefully they can get on the same page this offseason. I just think Emeka is going to be the focal point of this offense with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin declining. We know offensive coordinator Zach Robinson comes in. I think he's a great offensive coordinator. He comes in from Atlanta, where Drake London just had a big year. Bijan Robinson just had a big year. I really like Emeka. I also really like Bucky Irving this season, but I am expecting Emeka to avoid that sophomore slump, to surprise a lot of people, and kind of get back on track with what we saw from him the first 5 games or so of his rookie year. That's all I have for you guys today. Really appreciate each and every one of you watching this video. If you took away anything from this video, if you're enjoying this new series, comment down below, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.